Stepmom demanded that I pay my stepsister's rent. "If you don't, your dad will kick you out," she said. I kept quiet, and 3 days later when I showed my dad the video proof. For 8 months, I paid my half-sister Olivia's rent. 8 months of wiring money, paying her bills, and bailing her out whenever she needed extra cash. I never agreed to this voluntarily. My stepmother, Laura, made sure of that. She didn't ask, she demanded. She made it sound like it was my duty as a brother, that family takes care of each other. But what she really meant was that I should take care of Olivia while she and my dad did nothing. At first, I went along with it. I thought I was doing something good, something that would make me a better son, a better brother. I thought Olivia would at least appreciate it. She didn't. I found out by accident. I had gone over to Olivia's apartment one day, something I rarely did. She wasn't expecting me, so she left her phone on speaker while she talked to a friend. I didn't even pay attention at first until I heard my name. Her friend must have been asking about the rent, because Olivia laughed and said, "Oh, Edwin's still paying for everything. Can you believe that? He's such a loser." The friend giggled, and Olivia continued, "I don't even have to ask. My mom just tells him, and he sends the money. It's actually hilarious." I just stood there, my stomach churning. I had spent months helping her, giving up my own savings, thinking I was making a difference. And the whole time, she and her mother were laughing at me behind my back. I didn't say anything. I just walked out and went home. And after that day, I stopped paying. I didn't warn her. I didn't explain. I just stopped. It didn't take long for Laura to find out. 3 days after Olivia's rent was due, she showed up at my apartment angry. She didn't even bother to knock, she just walked in like she owned the place. Olivia was right behind her, arms crossed, looking very interested in how this was going to play out. Laura got right to the point. "Why didn't you send the money?" I leaned back on the couch. "Didn't feel like it." Her eyes narrowed. "That's not an answer, Edwin. You know Olivia needs the money." I shrugged. "She'll figure it out." Laura's face turned red. She launched into a speech about responsibility, about how I'd agreed to help, about how Olivia couldn't afford the apartment on her own. I let her talk. I didn't interrupt. I just waited, knowing exactly what would come next. And then she said it. The real threat. "If you don't pay, Dad will throw you out." That got my attention. I sat up. "What?" She crossed her arms. "You heard me. This apartment? It's in his name. He let you live here when you were a kid, but legally it's still his. If I tell him what you're doing, if I tell him you're abandoning Olivia, he'll make you leave. And believe me, he will listen to me." I looked at Olivia. She had a smug little smile on her face, as if she knew she had won. I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I just nodded. "We'll see." Laura smiled. "I hope so. Because your sister needs stability. And you're her brother. You should already know that." I just nodded again. "Yes. Yes, I know." They left, satisfied that they had put me in my place. What they didn't know was that I had something else planned. 3 days later, I asked my father to meet me at a neutral place. I had something to show him. And when he saw it, everything would change. 3 days after Laura's little threat, I met my father in a coffee shop. I chose the place carefully, not too close to home, not too fancy, just a quiet place where no one would recognize us. I wanted him to feel comfortable, but more importantly, I wanted him to listen. He showed up looking impatient, as if he had more important things to do. Typical. He never had much time for me, unless Laura made him. "What's this about?" he asked, putting down his coffee. "Laura said you were causing problems." I almost laughed. Of course, she had gotten to him first. I didn't waste any time. I pulled out my phone, tapped the screen, and slid it across the table. "Just watch." He frowned, but picked it up. His expression was bored at first until he saw what I had filmed. The video began with Laura sitting in a parked car. Not our family car. Not even a rental. She was in the passenger seat of a man's sedan, and the man sitting next to her wasn't my father. He was Indian, mid-40s, and the way she looked at him wasn't the way you look at a friend. Then came the part that mattered. She reached over, took his hand and kissed him. Right on the lips. My dad didn't blink. His face didn't change. But I saw his grip on the phone tighten. I let him watch the whole thing. When it was over, I finally spoke. I caught them by accident. I was out last week and I saw her get into the car. I thought it was weird, so I recorded a little, just in case. Then I followed them. He didn't say anything, so I continued. They went into a restaurant. I was sitting a couple of tables away. I didn't even try to catch them, but she didn't exactly hide it. I pulled out another video, this one from the restaurant. Laura and the guy were sitting close together, whispering and laughing. At one point he leaned over and kissed her on the cheek. I played that too. My dad hung up the phone. He stared at her for a long time. Then he rubbed his face, exhaled, and finally looked at me. Are you sure about this? Dad, you just saw it. His jaw tightened. He picked up the phone again, played the first video, then the second. I could see the war in his mind. He wanted to deny it. He wanted to believe that there was some logical explanation. But there wasn't. Finally he asked, Who is he? I don't know his name, I admitted. But I know where he works. I looked him up. I slid over a napkin on which I had written the address of the guy's office. Some financial firm downtown. Dad sat back, gripping his coffee cup so tightly I thought it might break. And then, to my surprise, he laughed. A dry, humorless chuckle. And here she was telling me you were the problem. Bingo. I leaned forward. Yes. She said if I didn't keep paying for Olivia's apartment, she'd make you kick me out. His eyes snapped back to mine. She said what? She said the apartment is in your name. And if I don't keep paying Olivia's rent, she'll make you kick me out. He shook his head, muttering something to himself. Then he took out his phone, scrolled for a second, and put it to his ear. Laura answered on the second ring. I could hear her voice over the speaker. Hey, honey. What's up? His voice was ice cold. Where are you right now? She hesitated. At home. Why? Are you? Another pause. Yes. He looked at me. I had my answer ready. I pulled up a live street cam on my phone. It showed an intersection downtown. And right there, in the crosswalk, was Laura. With him. I flipped the screen over to my dad just as Laura laughed at something the guy said and put her arm through his. Dad's face went blank. He took the phone off speaker and said, I'll be home soon. Then he hung up. He stood up, looking calmer than I expected. But I knew that look. It was the look of a man about to drop a bomb. What are you going to do? I asked. He didn't answer right away. Then he smiled just a little. Oh, she wants to play games? Fine. Let's play. And with that, he walked out. I had no idea what would happen next. But I knew one thing for sure. Laura had just made a big mistake. I sat in the cafe for a few minutes after my father left, just letting everything sink in. Laura had no idea what was about to happen. She had spent years manipulating my dad, making him believe she was the perfect wife while secretly controlling everything, especially when it came to me. She always made sure my dad saw me as the problem, the ungrateful son, while she and Olivia played the victims. But now, she was about to find out what happens when you push someone too far. An hour later, my cell phone buzzed. It was my dad. Dad, come to the house. Right now. That was all he said. No explanation. No details. I didn't hesitate. I got in my car and drove over, anticipating what was to come. The moment I walked in, I felt the tension. Laura was standing in the living room, her face flushed with anger. Olivia was right next to her, arms crossed, glaring at me as if I had just ruined her life. My father stood across from them, too calm, too controlled. And that's how I knew things had already exploded before I got there. Laura immediately turned on me. You filmed me? Her voice was sharp, full of indignation. You spied on me like a little rat? I shrugged. Didn't have to try very hard. You weren't exactly subtle. She scoffed and shook her head. And you actually believe that, Mark? She turned to my father. You believe this nonsense? He probably faked it just to get back at me. Dad just pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, and replayed the video. Laura flinched the moment she saw herself kissing the man's hand. She had no way out. But then, instead of denying it, she did something I didn't expect. She laughed. A slow, humorless chuckle. Then she crossed her arms. Fine. Yes, I've been seeing someone. But you know what, Mark? You're not exactly the perfect husband. Dad's jaw tightened. What's that supposed to mean? You're never home. You bury yourself in work, come home late, and expect me to just sit here and wait for you? Maybe if you had actually paid attention to me, I wouldn't have had to find someone else. I blinked. Was she actually trying to blame him for her cheating? Dad exhaled and shook his head. You could have just walked away, Laura. But instead you used me. And you used him. He gestured at me. Laura rolled her eyes. Oh, please. This is about that stupid rent thing, isn't it? You're mad because I asked Edwin to help his own sister? She's not my sister, I said flatly. Laura's face twisted in anger. Yes, she is. You share a father, don't you? Before I could answer, Dad interrupted. Edwin is not responsible for Olivia and never has been. That was your job. And instead, you tried to manipulate him into paying for her life while you laughed at him behind his back. Olivia finally spoke up. Mom didn't force him to do anything. He agreed. If he was stupid enough to pay, it's his fault. Dad turned to Olivia, his voice cold. You knew about this? Olivia lifted her chin. Of course I knew. And I don't regret it. He was stupid enough to pay for 8 months. That's on him. Laura put a protective hand on Olivia's arm. See? This is why you always treated my daughter differently. You never accepted her as part of the family. Dad sighed and ran a hand through his hair. You really don't get it, do you? He glanced at Olivia, then back at Laura. This isn't about me not accepting her. This is about you being a liar and a cheat. And the fact that you raised her to be just like you. Olivia scoffed. You know what? We don't need you. Mom and I will get our own place. I raised an eyebrow. With what money? That wiped the smirk off Olivia's face. Laura straightened. We'll figure it out. Then she turned back to Dad. But I'm telling you right now, Mark, you're not getting rid of me that easily. Dad exhaled and shook his head. I've already spoken to a lawyer. Laura flinched, and for the first time I saw real fear in her eyes. Dad continued. I've already started the divorce proceedings. And I'm going to make sure that you don't get a single cent from me that you don't deserve. Olivia snapped. You can't do that. Laura recovered quickly, her lips curling into a smile. Oh, Mark. You really think this is going to be easy for you? I'll fight you in court for everything. I've been your wife for 8 years. I have rights. Dad smiled just a little. You can try. But I've documented everything. And thanks to Edwin, I have proof of your affair. That'll make sure you don't get a cent more than you should. Laura's face twisted in anger. You little snake, she hissed at me. I just smiled. Oh, don't worry. You'll hate me even more soon. She grabbed Olivia's hand. Come on, sweetheart. We don't have to stay here and be disrespected. They stormed for the door, but before they left, Laura turned and pointed at my father. You are making a mistake. And believe me, you will regret it. Dad didn't even look up. Goodbye, Laura. And just like that, they were gone. But something told me it wasn't over. Laura wasn't the type to go quietly. And I had a feeling she wasn't done trying to make our lives miserable. For the first time in years, the house was quiet. After Laura and Olivia stormed out, My dad just sat down on the couch, rubbing his temples like he had a migraine. I didn't say anything right away. I just watched him, waiting to see how he would react now that the storm had passed. Finally, he looked up at me. Well, that was a disaster. I sat down across from him. It could have been worse. He chuckled dryly. Oh, it would be worse. Laura isn't the type to walk away without a fight. And he was right. It didn't take long for Laura to strike back. The very next morning, my dad got a call from his office, HR, to be specific. Someone had filed an anonymous complaint against him, accusing him of workplace misconduct. It was complete nonsense, of course. My dad was the most by-the-book person I knew. He barely even talked to his coworkers outside of meetings. But that didn't matter. The company had to investigate, which meant he was suddenly under scrutiny. It didn't take a genius to figure out who was behind it. While my dad was dealing with that, I got a taste of Laura's revenge myself. Around noon, I got a call from an unknown number. Normally, I wouldn't have answered, but for some reason I did. The moment I picked up, a man's voice said, "This is a call regarding your overdue balance of $5,200. This is your final warning before legal action is taken." I frowned. "Excuse me? What balance?" The guy on the other end sounded bored. "According to our records, you co-signed a lease agreement for an apartment, and the payment has been overdue for 30 days. That's when it hit me. Olivia's apartment. I felt my stomach drop. I never co-signed anything. There was a pause. Then the man read out an email address, the same one I used. This was the email provided when the lease was signed. Laura. I knew immediately what had happened. She must have forged my name on the lease, knowing I had been paying the rent anyway. And when I stopped, the unpaid rent became my problem. I clenched my jaw. "Send me a copy of the paperwork." It took an hour, but when I finally got the email, my suspicions were confirmed. My name was on the lease, except the signature wasn't mine. It was close, but I could tell. Laura had committed fraud. I drove straight to their new place, a tiny apartment that was way worse than Olivia's old one. I knocked hard on the door, and after a few seconds Laura opened it, looking way too pleased with herself. She smirked. "Oh, Edwin. What a surprise." I held up my phone. "You forged my name on Olivia's lease?" She didn't even blink. "Prove it." I took a step closer. "I already did. I have a copy of the lease, and I know that's not my signature. If you don't fix this right now, I will take this to the police." Olivia came up behind her mom, arms crossed. "Oh, please. What are you gonna do, Edwin? Run crying to Daddy again?" I turned to her. "You do realize this means you're getting evicted, right?" That wiped the smirk off her face. I turned back to Laura. "You have until tomorrow to fix this. Pay the overdue balance, take my name off, and admit what you did. If you don't, I'm filing a fraud report. And trust me, it won't end well for you." Laura's smile faltered just a little. "You wouldn't." I held up my phone. "Already have everything I need." For the first time, I saw real hesitation in her eyes. She thought she was untouchable. She thought my dad and I would just roll over and take it. She was wrong. I gave her one last look before turning to leave. "Your move, Laura." I didn't know what she would do next, but I knew one thing: this wasn't over yet. Not even close. I barely slept that night. Even though I had given Laura an ultimatum, I knew she wouldn't just back down. People like her don't admit defeat. They fight, claw, and manipulate until they have nothing left. I expected her to try something. I just didn't know what. The answer came the next morning. My dad was in the kitchen making coffee when his phone rang. I could tell from his face that it was something serious. He didn't even say anything at first, just listened, his expression getting darker by the second. Then he put the call on speaker. A voice on the other end, a woman from the bank, said, "Mr. Lawson, just to confirm, you did not authorize the attempted withdrawal of $10,000 from your account this morning?" My dad's jaw tightened. No. I didn't. The bank rep sighed. That's what we thought. We have security footage of a woman trying to access the account. She claimed to be your wife. I already knew who it was before she even said the name. Laura. She must have realized things were crumbling and tried to grab as much money as she could before my dad cut her off completely. What she didn't realize was that my dad had already frozen the account the day before. So when she walked into the bank and demanded the money, she triggered an automatic fraud alert. And because she had used her own ID to prove she was authorized, the bank had everything they needed to report her. By the time my dad and I got to the bank, the report had already been filed. The security footage showed Laura arguing with the teller, getting more and more frustrated when they refused to hand over the money. And then, an hour later, 2 police officers showed up at her apartment. I wasn't there to see it, but I heard later that she screamed at them, demanding to speak to my dad, insisting it was all a misunderstanding. But there was no way out. Fraud. Attempted identity theft. Unauthorized access to financial assets. She was done. About an hour later, Olivia called my dad. I could hear her through the phone before he even put it on speaker. She was furious. How could you do this to her? She made a mistake. You didn't have to call the police. My dad was completely calm. She called them on herself. She's my mother, Olivia snapped. Are you just gonna let her sit in jail? What's wrong with you? You're supposed to take care of us. Dad sighed. No, Olivia. I was supposed to take care of my wife. But your mother stopped being that the moment she cheated, lied, and tried to steal from me. And as for you, he paused. I don't owe you anything. Silence. Then Olivia's voice cracked. I don't have anywhere to go. For the first time, there was real fear in her voice. Dad exhaled. Maybe you should have thought about that before laughing at the person who kept you in that apartment for 8 months. Then he hung up. I stared at him. That was brutal. He took a sip of coffee. She'll survive. A few days later, Laura called from jail. She begged my dad to drop the charges. She swore she had just panicked and wasn't thinking straight. Dad listened for about 10 seconds. Then he simply said, No. And he hung up. That was the last time either of us spoke to her. As for Olivia, she tried reaching out a few more times, but when she realized either of us was going to send her money or bail her out, she gave up. Last I heard, she had moved in with some friends, barely scraping by. And honestly, that wasn't my problem. For the first time in years, my dad and I were free. No more manipulation. No more guilt trips. No more lies. Just peace. And it felt amazing.